Hi everyone, welcome to edX Pixel Expo 8th monthly webinar global webcast December series happening on every 8th of the month. And thank you for joining this Wednesday evening as we convene over United Cause, that is for our love for diving and the oceans, and of course some dive brands. With this session, being the last one of the for the year, I would like to invite all that is listening to like, comment, and share on this post to win a collector's edition of the upcoming Scuba Diver Australasia Diver Holic 2021-2022 digital diving magazines with compliments from us. And the session of the moment is, of course, titled Innovating Through the Pandemic, Diving into Scuba Equipment. Introducing, of course, the two moderators of this panel. We have, of course, Michael Thomas from UK. He is a TDI, nitrox, and technical diver training with a really long background in wreck, reef, ocean, and also cave exploration. He's also a fellow Royal Geographical Society FRGS. And our next moderator is, of course, Gareth Locke from the UK. He is the founder of The Human Diver, author of Under Pressure, Diving Deeper with Human Factors, and of course, documentary producer of If Only. And joining these two gentlemen is, of course, these three esteemed guests of ours from Dive Right. We have, of course, none other than Jared Hayes from USA. He is, of course, the general manager and also the marketing director of the brand. Next is, of course, we have two from Fourth Element. They are Jim Standing, founder and also director of Fourth Element, and also Paul Stride from the UK, founder and also managing director of Fourth Element. And last but not least, of course, we do have Darren Marshall from Canada, and currently now based in Thailand, the regional manager for Shearwater Shearwater Research. Without any further ado, please allow me to hand over this session to our two fabulous moderators, Michael and also Gareth. Over to you.
Thank you for that. Right, well, we're going to obviously make a start with the various brands' journeys. I don't know what you think, Gareth, but should we go for maybe Jared go first?
Yeah,
put me on the spot.
Yeah, put you on the spot.
You're going to have to be on the spot at some time.
Yeah,
for sure.
And basically, Dive Right's journey, fairly briefly from its start until now.
For sure. Yeah. So Dive Right has been around now. Wow, for like 35, 6, something like that years. Started in 1984 by Lamar Hires and a buddy of his, Mark Leonard. Of course, Lamar would be my father. They started the company based off of a love for diving, which is something that we kind of all share still. Most of our staff here actively dives. I actively dive. Of course, Dad is still out there actively diving. But our brand was born out of the need for specialized equipment, mainly for cave diving. So back in the mid 80s, there wasn't a lot of commercially available cave diving or technical diving equipment. So guys were making equipment in their garages. They were selling it maybe to local dive shops and onesie twosies, but there wasn't anything readily available. Things that we take for granted now, like reels, spools, big canister lights for cave diving and technical diving, they weren't around back then. And these guys back in 84 decided, hey, let's actually bring this stuff to the market and try to sell a commercially available prepackaged product. So that all started in 84, and we haven't stopped since then. We grew our product line from only like 13 products when we originally started. Some of those original products were the first ever commercially available backplate, the first wing dedicated for doubles tanks, some of the first big primary lights that were commercially available. And then we've now grown that over the years to probably over 1,000 products, including everything from single tank diving Of course, side mount diving, which I think we've been a pretty strong force in over the years, rebreathers, and everything that you need to get in the water and go diving. So we've got a full line, but really our company was born out of necessity, the need for the equipment, and our passion for diving.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. I mean, I've still got some of my original dive right reels from back in the day, Jared, and they won't break. They keep going.
Yeah, we still see a whole bunch of old stuff coming through, and when I'm out at the dive sites, we see a lot of old things, and people like to come tell me how much they love their 20-year-old regulator, their 20-year-old BC, and I'm like, yeah, that's awesome, but I'd like for you to buy something new too. But yeah, it is nice to see the old stuff hanging out there and still working after all these years.
Yeah, I mean, the slide lock reels are fantastic, but as I say, the old ones, they're not breaking. They're still there
for sure. Yeah, they'll last forever.
Divers love shiny stuff, so there's always got to be something that you can innovate and make, even if the old stuff still works. So
yeah, there's two types of divers. There's either the diver that is proud of their old kit and will not ever give up that 20-something-year-old reel or that 20-year-old BC, and then there's the diver that has the new one, the very latest, the new one that always comes out. So I'm probably kind of in between myself, but I kind of like the guy that buys all the new stuff, but the guy that has all their old stuff still working is nice too.
Totally. So looking at, where your equipment's gone, have there been sort of partnerships that you've worked on to build your capabilities? You start off with making your stuff yourself, but there's a limit to what you can do. So where else have you sort of sourced partners to build equipment that meets the consumers, the divers' needs?
So over the years, we have partnered with many different companies on projects. On the early days when we first were getting started in the late 80s and early 90s, we did not have the capabilities to make things like BCs ourselves. We didn't have all the equipment to do that. So even in the early days, we actually had partnered with Ziegel for some of our first BCs, and they were making them for us to our specs. And then later on, we moved to a couple of different companies that then were bought out by other bigger companies, to the point where we then could do it on our own. And then even now today, we do partner with other companies to come up with these new ideas, new designs. And a lot of our partnerships come from other divers out there that can then bring us ideas, ideas they have, but they can't actually bring it to fruition because they don't have the money or the expertise on manufacturing, and we'll take some of their ideas and then bring it into a mass-produced product. Even more recently, we have gotten into the rebreather market in 2004, and that has progressed over the years. So one of our current big partnerships, and another panelist member, is Shearwater. We've partnered with Shearwater ever since 2013 for the electronics for our rebreather, which over this last year, with the introduction of our chest-mounted Optima CM, has completely taken off and gone bonkers. So partnering with these companies that have expertise in things like electronics, which we might not have those expertise, has allowed us to innovate and bring some bigger products to the market that otherwise wouldn't be possible. So
cool. And sort of, I'm going to say desperation, but innovation often comes out of necessity. So have there been any sort of specific projects that you can think of that said, what, we got approached because we needed to get some stuff, whatever it is, made for a specific project?
So most of our big products that are out there have come from just that type of thing. One of our flagship products is the Transpac harness. It's been around since the mid 90s and has gone through a couple different iterations since the mid 90s. And that BC was born from projects, from expeditions, and the need for that type of equipment. That one in particular was born out of expeditions that my dad was doing to Japan at the time. He was going over there and exploring some deep sumps and some dry caves over in Japan. And they were shallow sumps, and they were having to go, of course, over a long distance. and having to climb up waterfalls, climb up over big mounds. And they needed something that they could carry in tanks on their back, make it easy for these long treks in, climbing up over stuff, but then be able to pull the tanks off and turn them into side mount tanks if they needed to go through restrictions, needed to be able to have independent doubles on their back if they needed, just for regular back mount type diving. And that's where that product came from, is from that type of exploration, and has now evolved. And then even more recently, things like our Optima chest mount rebreather was totally because of projects and exploration going on around here that pushed us to finalize the designs on that and really develop it. And now we have some of our guys that actually work for us that are doing major exploration, 7,000 foot back in Peacock 3 right now, a local cave, using that rebreather. So everything we do, I think, comes from necessity and, expeditions, the type, new types of diving that require new type of equipment.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, we brought in you brought in the Shearwater into the mix just now. Should we get Darren on up and get him to share the Shearwater journey?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think many of you know Bruce Partridge founded our company, and he started making computers in I think 2004 in his spare bedroom. He sold his computer firm a few years before, and was sort of in semi-retirement, and Lynn encouraged him to do something as a hobby, and so he started making a few things in the bedroom. And his intention was to make a computer for a few friends, and for it to do the things that he wanted it to do, and it would be a computer for his own hobby, sell a few to his mates, and that would be it. And that's not how it played out, I think, fortunately for divers everywhere. So production had to move to a larger facility when Lynn couldn't see the TV anymore for the manufacturing equipment that was blocking her view. And in 2005, the Shearwater GF was released, which was the first ever Trimix computer. And our computers really saw a lot of love and adoption in the tech diving community, and we had to move to bigger and bigger facilities as the demand grew. And now the Shearwater GF is a piece in the case in the Shearwater Museum at our Vancouver head office, but it really was the computer that started it all. And of course, things have moved on since the GF, and we're really proud of all of the models. And it blazed a trail for, including the Predator, which was the first to supersede it in 2009, and onwards to the Terek, which was our first watch-sized computer in 2018. So the Shearwater story, I think, is a very sort of honest, and comes from a really good journey to be where it is today, and it's something that everybody at Shearwater is super proud of. So that's where we are.
Excellent. Yeah, and I can remember, again, back in the day, when Nitrox first came out, we were praying for a computer that would switch gases. And then the early gas switch computers, you had to stand on your head, jump up and down, clap your hands, and you might just about be able to switch the gas on them. And then when I look at, the modern me with our Shearwaters, all the students with Shearwaters, they really are, it's kind of the go-to brand now for most people that are using technical diving computers.
Well, that's just fantastic to hear. I mean, it's always great to hear feedback like that from anybody. And being the choice of divers is not something that we take for granted, for sure. And so it's high praise that people choose our computers, especially in such demanding diving situations too.
It becomes a bit of a double-edged sword on that when things go, oh, there's an update, or when something happens, then it cascades out. And what from the feedback I get is customer service is fantastic in terms of making sure that the customers, the divers, when things do go wrong for whatever reason, they can't fix the computers or they've got some error, then actually the ability to reach out and contact Shearwater customer support and get a response back is fantastic. And I know from a safety point of view is the ability to pull some of the data back out those machines to be able to reconstruct events is critical, actually.
Yeah, I mean, really caring about our customers is one of our core values, and core values for companies are often something that people pay lip service to, or it's something that appears on just a website somewhere. And when Lynn first interviewed me for the job, she was just like, we have to, we really care about our customers, and I didn't really appreciate how much that actually followed through in the whole Shearwater experience. But over the years, that initial drive that's what Shearwater is about has just held true. And we're very proud of our customer service team. We're very proud that our customer service team are all instructors or enthusiastic divers themselves, are all current. And they really strive to help people that reach out to us. And we hope that isn't very often. But when it is, then we want to make sure that we're there for people and to make sure that we can get people back diving as quickly as possible if we need to, or just listen to what they have to say feedback-wise, because much of what we do as a company is to innovate based on customer feedback. And having a diver say to us, "Hey, it'd be really good to have this feature," that's what drives the next product. And so for us, it's great to hear that contact from people.
And I think that segues nicely into both Jim and Paul in terms of Fourth Element and what they do to bring a service and products to the diving industry. So what's the background behind Fourth Element, and where have you got to from where you started to now? And who's going to talk? But you've got to unmute first. Yes, we've got it in. You've got to unmute.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best place to start is actually with Paul. But before that, to say, like Jared's story about his father and how things kicked off. It's amazing how necessity is the mother of invention and the mother of innovation, and that really boils down to to Strikey's experiences as an instructor, and I'll pass that on to you.
Okay, yeah. Basically, spent a long time in a quarry in the UK in March, doing the PADI IDC, and was absolutely convinced I had the wrong kit because I was freezing cold the entire time, and couldn't quite. I thought, I've obviously got the wrong stuff. There's product out there for skiing and for kayaking and all sorts of things to keep you warm when you're involved in your chosen activity. There must be for diving, but I certainly didn't have it. And in the course of this experience, I realized that everybody who came or were involved in this IDC and examination, we had people that came over from the States and Canada, and everybody was freezing cold, and I couldn't quite get my head around this, and then realized that perhaps the kit didn't exist. And so that was a little seed in my mind. And Jim and I were in Egypt, and having had a very pleasant dive in the Red Sea, we're talking about the whole kind of scuba diving world. And after the post-dive beer, as is often kind of I think it's on our website and it keeps cropping up. We talked about the things that we would like to change about our experiences of scuba diving. And being warm was one of them, and having a kind of brand identity that kind of spoke to divers and kind of provided divers with a kind of identity in a sort of similar way to some of the surf brands that were around at the time, was something that Jim really felt that was lacking. And so at that moment, we kind of started thinking about, well, what would a company look like and what would a brand look like if we actually managed to go after these two kind of ambitions, be a kind of a brand that spoke to divers but also kept them warm. And that was back in 1999. And it's been a very exciting journey ever since. And of course, after launching some initial products to keep people warm, I suppose that in effect has been our mantra and our main ambition from that point. And it's obviously expanded into wetsuits and dry suits and pretty much everything designed to get in the water. So
I think we've developed over that time, from I think again, it's a common story for almost everyone in our sport, that we love diving, that we love being in the water, and whether you're going and you're looking at wrecks or exploring caves or looking for wildlife encounters, that we all venture into this same world, and that certainly for me it is very much a part of my identity, very much a part of how I felt about myself. And I know for sure that everybody in this panel and probably most people watching, identify themselves as a diver. And this is the bit that sort of has driven us in developing new ideas, developing the ideas that we've had over the last 20 years to create product that we feel meets a need. And this is, back to this whole thing of there's a necessity. And more recently, our developments have taken on a little twist, in that we have for a long time felt our responsibility to this ocean and to the environment that we all value and we all use, and that the thing that is driving our invention more and more now is thinking about how we can create products that are better for our environment one way or the other, and to minimize the damage that we do. And that's something we know is shared. This passion we know is shared by our friends and often partners at Dive Right and Shearwater, and in many other organizations. One of the beauties of this industry and of this sport is that we are so passionate about it, but we all are able to share our ideas openly with each other and collaborate. And I think back to times when conversations I've had with Jared and with his father at shows, and said we've got to do something about the issues that face the ocean. And a year later, Jared came up to us on the booth and said, look at this, and here's packaging for the fins without any single-use plastic, reusable packaging. And that ability to have those kind of open conversations about changing the way we work, and Shearwater immediately joining a mission to say we're going to get rid of our single-use plastic. We're going to make changes to the way we work. We achieve much more by doing it together and actually exchanging information and innovating together. And it's so great to be a part of a community like that.
It's really cool stuff to see the influence that happens from a group that spreads out. Have you got any sort of relationships and innovative, I'm going to say, activities outside the diving industry that you're bringing in? I'm thinking of the recycling organizations or technology that's out there of repurposing stuff is really novel. And I think that's where Fourth Element are standing up and just saying, look, we can do things differently. So anything on the sort of the technology side? So you're undoing a seatbelt.
As I'm reaching for my visual aids here, this is one of the things that's come out from the pandemic, that so many of us are now familiar with this product, with something which we're relying on, effectively a plastic product to save our lives, and to protect us, not just us, but the real heroes, the people on the front line, the first responders that are out there in hospitals and ambulances, dealing with essentially the role of keeping us safe. But and we are taking this stuff, the melted down end product from this that comes out of the back of our local hospital, and working with a fantastic organization in Cornwall called Waterhall, who are orchestrating this. We're creating, in this case, our first two products are the non-directional line markers and directional line markers, because I get called dollar for calling them cookies. But we've developed those from this material, reusing the mask, retasking the mask as a product that divers can use, and that's definitely using technology and using influence from outside of our industry. But at the same time, Paul has also spent a lot of time working with the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, talking to the guys at Ghost Diving, and where they're gathering a raw material as divers, but that raw material, the ghost fishing net which they bring out of the sea, it's ending up outside the dive industry being recycled and repurposed into new yarns, but then we're bringing it back in and putting it into other parts of our products as well. So that there's no question that we need to look outside our narrow field in order to find new ideas. And it's all about how we bring those ideas forward in the future, which is hopefully where we can continue to make a difference.
Excellent.
Michael, the exhibit B is in my hand here, and these, thanks to Jim and Strikey, are about to go into Wookey Hole Cave very soon for a relining project.
Excellent.
And your packaging is your paper packaging when you send out orders to customers is truly superb, I think. But let's move it on a little bit, and let's go back to Jared and Dive Right's technology advancements. What's new? What's talking to us now?
Well, I mean, we've been working on several things over the last 2 years, making small advancements and always pushing forward. Like we talked about, a lot of our stuff comes from the necessity out there of new projects, things like that we're working on. So at the very beginning of 2020, our big product that we launched, which is over my shoulder over here, was our Optima CM chest mounted rebreather, which has really kept us very busy over the last 2 years. We launched at a good point because it definitely kept us moving pretty quick through the pandemic, trying to build these and ship them out. So that's been one of our newest big launches over the last 2 years. There were chest mount rebreathers out there on the market before, maybe not to the launch and the scale. I know that you guys over in the UK have been using that type of technology for years with the sump diving and all, but a pre-packaged, fully electronically controlled ECCR available in a chest mount configuration has really been one of our latest innovations, and it's been interesting because it's a new form for a lot of people, especially over here at home where we didn't have that type of influence from the European units. So over here in the US, we've seen a huge shift in just how people dive a rebreather. So that's been a big change for us over the last year. And we've, of course, been working on some other products that started before the pandemic began and then took a little bit of a backseat in 2020 and then now have become come to fruition for 2021. One of them being a new regulator that we literally have not even launched to the public yet, but this will be available probably right before Christmas. So you guys are getting to see one of the first looks at it right now. So all kinds of cool stuff going on.
Excellent. That's it's really, I love it when we get to sit and talk like this and you can just see what's coming on. Because I think I've been diving 35 years now, and I must be some sort of a bit of a nerd because I still love the new kit and the new ideas. It's really good stuff. So how about Shearwater? What's new there?
Oh, for us, our last big launch was really the Swift transmitter, and it's a big safety item for us. I think as a diver, there's nothing more important than actually knowing how much gas you actually have, so you can get back safely and comfortably from your dive. And the Swift combined with a Shearwater computer, I mean, it just gives divers real-time information, gas remaining, taking into account breathing rate, depth reserves, and it's really a game changer. And I think you can see that you give a transmitter to anybody for the first time, and of course, they're just sort of blown away, thinking, how have I been diving through all of these years, not being able to just have this conveniently on my wrist? But transmitter technology isn't new, and it's something that we've had for a long time, but our new implementation in the Swift really increases the reliability. It's got a strong and stable connection. Whether you have one tank or you have lots of tanks as you'll need when you go to Wookie Hole or anywhere else. So I think that technology like that is really useful. It's effortless, and it's a practical safety item that drives better adoption of technology within diving as well. I mean, if you think back to 10 years ago, the term of transmitters in technical diving was pretty much not sure about that. Whereas today, of course, we've got widespread adoption of that, and I think that it's this modern take on that gives confidence to divers underwater, and more importantly, it gets them back safely after having just a fantastic dive. So that's really probably the last thing that we launched. But of course, but before then, the whole COVID situation has been an interesting sort of journey for us. I think when it first started, we had this brand new computer called the Peregrine, and all of a sudden, this launch sort of turned into the situation of, how do you launch something when you can't go to a dive show anymore and you can't actually physically show anybody anything? And how do you do it when your own office is closed too? And so we had to sort of think long and hard about how we tell people about our new computer and tell people about our new product. And this is a fantastic product. It's an entry level, sort of low cost computer that's available for everybody, but still has our legendary bright, clear, crisp display. And it rolled off the tongue oh so easily to say, oh, we will have a live stream presentation to everybody. Now, at the time, it seemed quite easy to do, but this is before sort of Zoom really took off or anybody knew what to do. So we all sort of agreed this is how we would do it, at which point everyone sort of sat down and said, well, how's that actually going to happen? And so with great difficulty, the actual answer. So we ended up sort of setting up green screens and everything else, and rehearsing all of this big live presentation for this launch, advertised it on Facebook and everything, and then finally at the critical moment, we were all sat there and said, okay, we'll go live now, and press go, and there's just a blank screen. And then much fumbling around for the next 30 seconds of anticipation before it sort of all kicked in. But it's been interesting sort of trying to bring products and trying to bring that innovation to people, and increase awareness of it in these times when we can't actually show people. Diving is a very personal experience. It's something that you do with your mates. You got into diving because you wanted to you want to go meet people, go on dives. You go to dive shows because you want to speak to other divers. You go diving because you want to dive with your mates. So it's a very sociable sport. And to take away that social aspect of it it's actually been quite difficult for a lot of divers. So finding ways to connect, I think, has been quite a challenge for us. So those are really the last two things that we have. But with all of our products, I think that the nice thing about having a tech product is that whilst we've got hardware platforms, of course, we've got so much we can do with firmware all of the time. So this is, going back to what you said about waiting for the new release to come out and what features are going to be introduced and things like that. So we can always still constantly sort of push the dial forward and then hopefully give divers what they actually need underwater.
Cool. And moving on then to fourth element, what's on the horizons for your stuff that will get people going? Or can you tell us? It's your secret. We don't want to let the cat out the bag already.
No, we can't do that. I suppose I was just thinking about what we've done in recent history and through the pandemic in terms of product development. And obviously, as Jim mentioned earlier, a lot of our focus has been on using recycled materials and minimizing our environmental impact. And I suppose for the last 10 years, we've been making subtle changes to product, which has continued through the pandemic, where we're sourcing, recycled yarns, integrating those into perhaps existing fabrics, but without or ensuring that we don't, diminish any of the performance. So that's an ongoing development, you might say, of moving towards more recycled, more sustainable sources for our materials. And creating product that performs, obviously at the highest level. That's obviously always absolute key to any of the products that we produce, and this remains the ambition, along with the sustainable recycled element. As a specific product that we launched during the pandemic, then and on that theme, I've got one here. Jim just gave one to me earlier. Probably can't see it terribly well, but is our first, but hopefully not last, natural rubber, latex wetsuit. So rather than using, in effect now what you'd call the traditional chloroprene chip to create the neoprene foam sheet, then this is actually derived from a natural rubber tree, and as the strapline says, grown, not made. And this has proved to be a very well received product, and certainly for those people who are sort of focused on environmental impact. And we called it Surface because although we had done extensive tests of using the product in a dive context, we just wanted to ensure that we didn't have any dissatisfaction from somebody taking it to 50 meters on a technical dive and squeezing it a bit more than it wanted. And but we've actually found long-term tests with some of the guys out there that we use for that kind of purpose, where they're diving the suits perhaps every day, as technical dive instructors and so on and so forth, that the suit has actually performed really very, very well even in that environment. But I'm sure Jim is kind of clenching slightly at the thought of that, but of that kind of
not at all. But I think like Darren described there, the challenges of bringing a product to market during the pandemic has definitely been something that we've also experienced those same things of not knowing how to really bring this. We fortunate with that, we were able to show this at two DEMAs prior to the pandemic, and we were able to at least let people have a glimpse of what we were thinking about before we actually brought it to market. And again, I know we've all experienced this, and diving's not the only industry to have experienced these challenges of supply chain. And but we also showed probably our most eagerly anticipated product that we've ever shown at a show, that our new Halo AR undergarment just before the pandemic, and then really then struggled basically to get it to bring it to market in its finished form. But happy to say that early next year, the Halo AR will arrive. It is on its way, and so that's something that we've spent time refining and working on during the last 20 months, and in some ways, the final product will benefit from having had these kind of lead time challenges. It would have been tweaked a little bit more than perhaps we would have done had we been bringing it to market on the normal time frame. So not to say that that we're grateful for that, but there are some benefits for having been made to slow down a little bit and to think a little bit more about the product as well. But no, we've certainly not been sitting on our laurels, and there's a lot of new product coming through in the next few months, which will demonstrate again our further commitment to creating product that meets an environmental standard that is a high environmental standard that we believe in, and we believe is the future of our brand.
I mean, there's a saying in the caving and the British cave diving in the scene that anyone can be cold. It just takes a little bit of thought to be warm. So I'm really really looking forward to seeing that new suit come out in the new year, because that's going to be a bit of a game changer, I think. Yeah. But as divers, we've got divers and instructors and manufacturers. We do have a requirement for safety and research and development. So let's go back to Jared and see where Diverite is on the R&D front and the safety requirements front.
Well, I mean, of course, when you're launching a new product, you got to make sure it's safe. I think that's pretty well in any industry, whether or not it's diving or, I mean, probably even plastic toys for kids or cars or whatever. We have a obligation to make sure that type of stuff is safe for our customer. One thing that I think sets us apart, as well as the other guys on this panel, is that we are a company of divers. So when we design something, we're willing to go take it out and try it ourselves, and put our butts on the line sometimes for that R&D process and do some really thorough testing. Things like rebreathers, regulators, products like that, of course, require even more testing and safety precautions. But you can't just take any little, one little tweak to a rebreather. You can't go run it off to the lab and bring it down and do testing, because it's quite expensive. So a lot of times there are a period of time, especially with our latest launch of the Optimus CM, which is the freshest in my mind of the safety procedures we took for that. That was multiple in-house test dives, pool dives, safe, where we have a safety diver with us that's on open circuit, that's able to quickly respond if there's an issue. We test. Probably Lamar, he was still one of our biggest test dummies. Probably takes it a little too far. He's the type of guy that'll take it to the back of the cave. It doesn't matter if it's brand new. But a lot of us are maybe a little bit more cautious. And then after we get to the point where we're ready to say, hey, let's take something to the market, something like a rebreather, we then will seek out third-party testing to then do stability tests, work of breathing test, and to do all the final checks to make sure that it's safe to bring to the market. So in the case of the Optimus CM, after we went through our several months of diver testing of divers here in the office, because we have, I guess, on staff right now, 8 rebreather divers that are actively diving the units and are out there, testing it. After we did our thorough testing ourselves, we take it to Dive Lab over in Panama City. He does the actual third-party testing, has an ANSI testing machine. We also send it up to Micropore, who we partner with for the scrubber technology, who also has an ANSI testing machine to do their duration tests and their stability tests on the unit. And then from there, we can go, okay, yes, we have done proper diver testing. We've done proper, lab testing. And then we, of course, push it out to the market. A similar thing that we would also do with a regulator. It goes through the same exact process. But one of the things that we do as a company, and it's always been our I guess our motto or our kind of culture here, is that because we are a company of divers, we are out there testing. We don't pull anything off the shelf from, we don't have a vendor coming and selling us a product that we just take off the shelf and we say, hey, here you go, we'll send it out to our customers. Anything that we come up with, it's a design that we've worked on ourselves, and it's something that we're willing to actually get in the water and take diving ourselves on some pretty extreme dives. Anything from warm water Caribbean dives to deep cave exploration, to cold diving and cold water diving, which is something that I personally try to do. I know that Lamar has done over the years, and we try to ingrain in our staff, is I not only want to make a piece of equipment that I know is safe for my diving here, I want to go test it for myself in different environments. So that's why every year we at least do a warm water Caribbean trip where we're doing, deep dives. I try to do at least 1 to 2 cold water dives a year. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, I haven't been able to travel as much to do that. But right before we got shut down, we were on the refugee flight home in March of 2020. We were actually over in Plura Cave in Norway, doing a week of cold water test diving on our regulators and deep cave diving. We plan to go back this March, actually back to Plura, to take the Optimus CM and put it through its paces in some cold water and cold surface temperatures. So when we look at safety, we're all about making sure that it's safe for ourselves to go into those conditions, and we have tested it before it ever actually gets to our end consumer.
I think so. It would be remiss of me not to bring any sort of human factor stuff in. And I know that from a testing point of view, Tim Clements gave a great presentation at the conference in September earlier this year about actually the human factors within the CE marking that's there. And the proceedings for that, the conference will be out in probably February time, hopefully before the end of February. and he's put together a paper that's really looking at how do we increase the usability of the system. So taking into account the person and the hardware that's there, and actually, does the current standard meet what's out there? You can pass a standard and it might not necessarily meet the people that are going to use it. So I'm hoping that gets a bit of visibility in terms of addressing those factors.
Yeah, rebreathers are, of course, a whole different ballgame in the diving industry when it comes to things like the human factors that are involved with it. One of the things that I think helps me definitely as a company, as a manager, helps Lamar when it comes to designing these products is that we are also active instructors on the unit. So, which is not always the case. Most of the other rebreather manufacturers, they do have staff instructors, or the owners or the designers are instructors, but maybe not actively teaching. I'm actively teaching. I think I've got it right at 40 students for this year on our unit. So actively teaching these new divers too. I mean, everybody from the very seasoned rebreather diver to the nitrox only recreational level rebreather diver. And it gives us a lot of insight, and we do make changes and make additions and add more safety features to the units based off of that feedback of what I see our students actually interacting with the unit on their first dives in class, which is very valuable information to us.
Totally.
The cold water diving, the cold water testing, that really is a good proving ground for both the diver and the equipment, because it's being cold. I mean, as the Fourth Element guys know, being cold is hard. So it's really good to see. So how about Paul? Sorry, not Paul. How about Darren and Shearwater? What's the current R&D for you guys?
Well, it's kind of one of those things. We'll watch this space on what we've got planned. But as Jared rightly said, I mean, the process of innovation is quite actually a lengthy one, and it can't be taken lightly. So things that we actually are planning now, working on, may not be seen for 1, 2, 3 years, and the same goes for a computer as it goes for a regulator or an undersuit. So it's actually a lengthy process, and I think addressing the safety element of that is critical throughout of it. And for us, reliability is the key objective from our computers, because it keeps people safe underwater. You've got to know what's going on all the time. And so, we've moved to have a strong culture of safety within Shearwater, and to really embrace the standards that Gareth spoke of. So, we are ISO 9001, we have CE for everything, FCC ratings, international standards for anything else. But it's important that you live those values, as well as just paying lip service to the paper and getting the certificate, and actually being transparent in what you do is all important. And so, whilst we make our products to exceed those standards, as a company, what we try and do is be a part, help setting them as well, along with Jared, we're a founding member of RESA, the Rebreather Education and Safety Council, which strives to improve safety through training and manufacturing standards. And that's something that's really helped sort of push the needle in a certain way in an area that's traditionally had more risk with rebreathers. As Jared said, it's a completely different ball game. So trying to standardize things amongst a whole set of manufacturers and training organizations really helps to create a much better culture for the whole of the diving community, especially when they start to look at rebreathers, which are now becoming really the de facto tool for a lot of technical diving. When people actually look to spend their money, they can't spend their money on a holiday anymore, because perhaps they spent it locked down in their own country, and all of a sudden this pocket money's got a nice big expensive toy. And so it's making sure people are safe throughout that. So it's quite a challenge keeping up with all the various standards around the world, but I think it's just critical that products do meet those standards, so the customer actually knows that they're buying something that's reliable as a product, and that there's customer support and a a worthy company standing behind that too, that's willing to be transparent about the whole development process. Much like Jared and the guys at Fourth Element, we're all active divers in Shearwater, and if you like, the development process is us being crash test dummies. So somebody has an idea and it starts as an idea, and then you take it diving, and then did that work, and it develops on from there. The actual impetus for a lot of our products, though, as I touched on earlier, comes from the actual diving community. So when somebody writes to us and says, "Hey, I've got this great idea. I wish my Perdex did this. Or I wish my Terric did this," that idea isn't just put down somewhere and they get an email back. It actually makes it to the engineering team, who all sit down in front of a whiteboard regularly and say, "Okay, there's this whole list of ideas. Wow, that one's great." And that's how the process starts, and it's driven by need and necessity, as Jim talked about earlier on. And from there, the engineering team starts to play with things, and the whole process starts. And whilst, of course, it's incredibly complicated and incredibly well defined as a process, it's having people going out there within the company actually actively using the product, which really makes the difference. Our engineering team is out there every single week going diving. Most of the people within our company are divers, and I think that speaks volume to what actually comes out the other end, because you end up with something that people really want to use. So as to what comes next, I can't tell you that, but I'm very excited for it, and I can tell you that a lot of divers will want it.
Excellent. That's great to hear.
Yeah, that's truly good. I mean, one of the things I think I love, and a lot of my students and divers that I talk to love, are the regular updates. The firmware updates from the Shearwaters, and all of a sudden my Shearwater's doing some really cool stuff, and it's like, yeah, I like that. That's good. That's really good. So should we finish up our hour with Jim and Paul going on your R&D? They've muted us again.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose echoing what's been said already, although other than our dry suit, which is obviously very much more in the life support system kind of bracket, the thermal gear on some level less so, but in so many ways completely so, because as we all know that if we're I mean, Jim and I still do manage to do a bit of product testing ourselves, but if we get it wrong, sometimes the worst that can happen is you just get cold, which is not so life-threatening on one level. Though of course we all know that if you're cold on a dive that's challenging, your decision making starts to be impaired, and you start worrying more about the fact you are too chilly, and that's obviously, as we all know, not a good place to be. And there is a point where it starts becoming really serious, a real serious problem with regards to your general well-being. But our design team, well, as we've already discussed, many of our employees in all of the companies here today, are divers, and that is the same for us. Many of our design team are divers and or other water sport enthusiasts. We live in Cornwall, next to the coast, and we've got a lot of surfers and a lot of sort of free divers and and swimmers now. Jim's one of them, in fact. And so we live and breathe the product on various levels. And so when we are involved in the design process, Jim, even his main role is sales and marketing, but of course is the conduit from that from the consumer and sales staff who are saying, this is what's being asked for, this is what we need, these are the things that are that our customers want. Is very much part of the design process and involved in those initial briefs when we're thinking about ideas and concepts for the future. So I'm sure, like you say, all of us, we understand the need to be in close contact with our customers, to understand, to get and to use that feedback. As Darren was saying, it's not oh, thanks very much, that's a nice idea, and there it goes. It is actually brought to the forefront in design meetings and genuinely considered.
Absolutely. I mean, we're lucky. We have very passionate divers. We have our own in-house test team. With a couple of notable members of the team. There's Ramva, who is an explorer in her own right, and Tony Reed, who has spent his life in diving, previously with Rebreathers and now with us, and we regularly send them out to see if they can see if they can really put it through its paces, much more so than perhaps Paul and myself would do. But yeah, if you want to know if something will perform in open water swimming, I'm your man these days. What's more important to us is we get this feedback saying, oh, I love the Halo 3D, but frankly it's a bit too bulky. I need to put different layers on underneath. And that's the conversation that leads us to look for new materials to reduce the bulk of the undergarment, so that people are able to have a more versatile layering system. And that essentially was the brief for the Halo AR. Make it thinner, similar warmth, make it thinner so you can layer more effectively with it and stay flexible and stay more comfortable. These were the ideas which, without that feedback from the users, without people actually out there using it and testing it, yes, we would still be able to come up with our own ideas, but actually, being part of this really avid community of users, that people who are willing to share their ideas and willing, we get enough volunteers, people who want to test stuff for us, but people who really want to, contribute and feel like that, their voices are heard. It's incredibly valuable to us, and I think it's another thing that makes our industry and our sport special.
Cool.
But I think, you said earlier that you didn't think that thermal equipment was what's the word, life support. I'd kind of disagree with you there. I actually think it's truly life support.
Yeah.
On a recent cave rescue about 4 weeks ago in the United Kingdom in South Wales, the cold was becoming a serious issue, not just for the casualty, but for the 200 odd rescuers that were underground. So I think people do, they underestimate the cold. They do underestimate it.
Totally. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your engagement. It's been really good. Some great insights for people. And thank you very much for ADEX for putting it together.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Over to you, Nora.
Yes, thank you so much. To be honest, I think we can still continue talking about this if it is something that is within my control. Because when you're talking about technological advancement and also something to do with the possibility of how you can actually further expand on engineering and also on the aspect of circular economy and how we can, push it further, I think there's just too many possibilities, I feel, and I think we are just scratching the surface, to be honest. And I hope there's going to be a point 2 or part 2 or part 3 or part 4 to this, but we'll see. Anyway, thank you. I would like to say thank you so much again to Jim, Paul, Jared. Jared, this is the first time I'm meeting you. Thank you very much for being a part of this. And also Darren, first time as well. Pleasure to meet you as well. Michael, thank you so much for doing this. And of course, Gareth, thank you again. So on behalf of ADEX and everybody that is watching, we'd like to say thank you so much for being with us for the past 2 years during the COVID period, to listen to this webinar series that we do like month to month, weeks to weeks. And we are actually going to put our Zoom session, hang it up a little bit for a while because we need some rest, to be honest. And we hope to see everyone in 2022 with more ideas, I guess, and maybe with new people and new collaboration and new partnerships that we can look into. And once again, thank you very much. And before we go,
and hold on, Nora. Let me just add on something.
Sure, Carter.
Earlier today at about 12 Singapore 12 p.m. Singapore time, I shared about a virtual expo. It's a virtual exhibition which I would like to personally invite all the panelists here to join. I will shortly send out an email invitation. So yeah, stay tuned. Yeah,
Great.
Well, that's why we have Carter for this. So anyway, the reason why I'm doing this is for every webinar series, we always have a Wi-Fi. And for Wi-Fi, I don't think any of you have done this yet. So usually we will do two different kind of poses. So one of the pose is just this very boring singular smiley one, where I will use it for social media purposes, because it's usually marketing approved. Because most of the time you guys look good, right? So the second one would be more on something a little bit more naughty and playful, where you'll be showing, where you get creative with hand signals for diving. Yes.